Well, Rob, a person who's a big issue seller is somebody who's homeless or vulnerably housed. In other words, someone who's pretty much fallen on hard times and lost every form of support network that most of us take for granted. That means that we, in many instances, offer the sort of last chance for somebody to actually earn a legitimate income and to start their own micro-business. The Big Issue magazine is something that our vendors actually use their own cash for, and they run it as a business and they sell it at their own profit and loss. So it's there as an opportunity to help people at a time of real crisis and get some money in a very legitimate business-like way.
Some people see them as beggars on the streets, but they're actually investing. You give them the first few magazines for free, they have to sell those, and the money they earn from those they reinvest into new magazines.
Spot on. The idea of this is that you have to get people thinking about tomorrow. The tragedy and the sort of difficulty when you're street homeless is that in many instances you're thinking the next hour, 2 hours ahead. You know, what am I going to eat? Where am I going to get out of the rain? And so on and so forth. The idea that you have to save enough money to start your business the next day, no matter what else you might do with it, is transformational because it gives you an opportunity to think about the future. And from that, with the Big Issue and the Big Issue Foundation can start to build other steps that will take you away from the streets and get you back into housing, accommodation, banking and mainstream society.
Again, people don't realise how much help it can be just by buying one magazine. That can mean the difference between a meal or not, can't it?
It really can. I mean, the magazine we sell to our vendors at £1.25 and they sell it at £2.50. And, that cash is something that they reinvest in their business and that they use literally, yes, to eat and to get by. So it's a very important transaction. But we'd also always want people to actually take the magazine, read it and enjoy it. You know, your Big Issue vendor on your local high street in Hamilton, in Felixstowe, for example, is they're a newsagent and they're out there working. So that's what the thing that we'd really like most people to remember. Our Big Issue vendors are working, not begging.
The sad situation is that they're there and they exist, but on a positive side, they are getting a lot more recognition now, and people in towns tend to trust them and rely on them.
Yes, you're too right there. I mean, our vendors are very popular with PCOs, the local police, and so on, because they're the eyes and ears of the street. And, many people will ask our vendors for directions because they know where to go. So they're very much sort of, part and parcel, almost like a town crier, I think, and very much part of the local community, which is exactly what we would like them to be seen as. These are people who are working outside, but they're not outsiders.
This brings me nicely on the article I read on your Facebook page today about an incident in Birmingham. Tell me about that, because this is great news.
Yes, that's right. Well, it was a letter that came in from a member of the public that was talking about an incident where one of our vendors was helping an older guy who'd perhaps fainted, but certainly fallen over whilst crossing the road. And he was helping him out and literally was virtually close to performing first aid in this instance because he was very capable and took the time and care to look after this gentleman until help arrived. So, very much being, a good citizen out there sorting something out when they see it. And, of course, our vendors see a lot on the streets.
Coincidentally, and fantastic coincidence it was, this links up now with your British Red Cross this year's Health Week that you're running.
Yes, indeed, and we're delighted that we've formed a partnership with the British Red Cross that will give our vendors throughout the UK a very small but very factual and succinct leaflet on first aid training. So this will equip our vendors in situations not just when they're at work during the day selling the magazine, but in any instance, like the rest of us as citizens, with some real sort of fundamental first aid skills. And some of these are focused on for people who might be spending a lot of time on the street in terms of, for example, instances of, hypothermia as the winter's coming up. But people have fallen over, people have had seizures, that kind of thing. So it's really helping to equip them with, another skill to deal with situations that they frequently encounter.
Will all vendors have this training then?
They will. The idea at the moment is that we will make sure that in the beginning of November that vendors all get these leaflets, and then we'll be running a program whereby we'll be offering some bespoke training to our vendors, so that in many instances there'll be street traders and first aiders, which I think is a real sort of step up. Sometimes people just look at a homeless person or a Big Issue vendor and think, oh, that's who they are, but actually they've got loads of skills, and this is another way of equipping them to perform something really useful in their local community.
And not just a skill, a bit more self-respect, because in their position, they have lost a lot, and they may have come from any background, and as normal as your job or mine, and going down to nothing. But this gives them a chance to build up inside as well.
Absolutely. I mean, sadly, our vendors will be frequent recipients of stereotypes and prejudices whilst they're at work, and this helps to challenge some of those pieces and build their self-esteem. And despite all the sort of setbacks and hassles you can get sometimes from people who hold negative views about people who are homeless, it has to be said that your sense of self-confidence and self-esteem increases by interacting with the public. So I'd like to thank all the big issue supporters and readers and believers out there for taking the time to say hello and buy a magazine. It's a really important thing that you do.
So the Health Week is in October, or is it November?
It's the beginning of November, and it runs for a week, and it includes many other aspects of healthcare, from dentistry through to kind of therapies and a whole host of things. But at the heart of it is this desire to train up and skill people who are out there on the street, actually who encounter all sorts of situations where first aid would be incredibly useful.